Hi, I'm Joe, the Video Whisperer, and this is my lovely assistant, Gemma.
Hi.
This is part 2 of the lighting tutorial series entitled Lighting for Video That Doesn't Suck. I highly recommend you watch part 1 because part 1 goes into the fundamentals of lighting, why lighting, and some other interesting bits of information you might not have heard elsewhere. But now we're going to get mechanical. We're just going to get down to the mechanics of where these lights are placed. Now, first off, we're only going to concern ourselves with 3 lights today. We're not going to concern ourselves with set lighting the background. Whatever is lighting the background is lighting the background. I do have, right now, a balanced key light, fill light, and backlight on this scene. And I did take measure to block light off those lights as much as possible off the background. Now, there's 2 reasons for that. If we were going to bring additional lights into the background, it can't be all brightly lit to begin with because you won't get any modeling or effect. And secondly, which is going to be the subject of a whole separate video, is the subject of contrast. And that is, we want Gemma to stand forward from the background, so we don't want the background to be as bright. So in setting up these lights, I have used black foil to shield as much as possible from hitting the background. All right, in this demonstration, we're going to be having Gemma look slightly off camera as if she's being interviewed. In other words, we're going to do some standard interview lighting. And so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to frame up a little closer for a proper interview shot. Now let's go through these lights. And let's take up the main light. The first thing you want to do is position the light with no other lights on the set. And in this case, as I went over last time, I'm lighting her with Rembrandt lighting, where you have this nice little triangle of light here. But I want to point out that there's other ways of lighting, so let's just show them. Butterfly lighting is when the light is above the person and you have a slight nose shadow cast downward. I find this to be a little flat and it doesn't take advantage of full modeling, so I don't usually light this way, but sometimes it might be advisable to, because one of the considerations in lighting is the actor or actress himself. You always light for the person. If you want to accentuate age, you would accentuate shadows. If you wanted to lessen age, you would fill the shadows more and things like that. So what I'm telling you is, this is my preference for lighting Gemma in an interview, but that's not necessarily the same for who you might have sitting there, and there could be other ways of doing it. Now, this is casting the shadow the opposite way. There's an old term, I don't know if it's used anymore, that describes this type of lighting. It's called basic lighting, which is the opposite of Rembrandt. I've often seen this used in interview lighting, but I don't like it because I don't like the lit portion facing camera. I'd much rather have the shadow portion facing camera. So let's go back to the way we started off. And there we have our basic Rembrandt. Okay? Next thing we want to do is add some fill, because those shadows are rather dark. So I'm going to turn on the fill light. Now the fill light is normally positioned on the axis of the camera lens. The reason for that is when it's on the axis of the camera lens, it is not actually casting any additional shadows. It's not adding shadows to the scene. Any light from the fill is only casting shadows directly backwards that you can't see. So essentially the fill helps reduce the density of the shadows by the key light. Now I have on this particular light I have a neutral density gel. I'm going to take it off and you see now you've got a lot more fill and a lot less shadow. There's various ways you can change the fill light. If you have a lamp that has multiple bulbs, you can turn bulbs off. Right now, let's just try turning this off axis. I'm turning the light away, 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 away. So it's hardly pointed at her at all right now. Now I'm going to turn it back on her. All right. And now I'm going to put that gel back on. Now you might find there that the shadow is still a bit dense. But I'm going to turn on the backlight, and I know the backlight is going to add some overall light to the room, and it's probably going to balance that fill just exactly the way I want it. Okay, so that's three-point lighting, the basic mechanics of it. Now, how does this apply to when you arrive on a location to light a subject? Well, it's pretty simple. The key light for Rembrandt position is, if you consider a clock, it's at 2 o'clock vertical and 2 o'clock horizontal. Horizontal being this axis, vertical being this axis. So that's about 2 o'clock, 2 o'clock. Where do you put the backlight? Some people say the backlight should be directly behind the person. I generally put it opposite the key. So the general backlight direction is coming from here. The key light direction is coming from there. So this backlight is actually also at about 2 o'clock vertical, 2 o'clock horizontal. That doesn't mean you can't be elsewhere. Let's see what it does if you bring it around a bit more. Possibly now I've introduced a light onto her cheek here, which I have. Not possibly, I actually have. Depending on the person, that could be a good or a bad effect. Now, if we bring her hair back, and if I back that around just a little bit more, so it's a little less distinct, it's still a little bit too distinct, I think. It can add a nice little highlight on the side there. So that's also the backlight doing that. Now you can also position the backlight so that that doesn't happen and use an additional light to create a little effect like that as well. Let's see what happens when we put it right directly behind her. Even though this is going to be in the frame, disregard that for a moment because there is a way to hang a backlight so you don't see the stand. And that's what we get there. Okay, now let's put it back to where I had it. So that's basically the mechanics of three-point lighting. You've got your key light, your fill light, and your backlight. Now there's something else to consider. Right now we're shooting in a completely controlled environment. There's two windows here that are completely blacked out. And so all the lighting in the room is being created by these three lights. Very often you will have, say in an office environment, an entire wall of windows or something, you know, on this side or on that side. And these things may dictate your key light. They may be your key light or your backlight. So all I'm saying is control the lighting to the best of your ability. Use existing lighting as you can to the best advantage and produce the best possible lighting you can for your subject. And I assure you the quality of your interview lighting and interviews will be better than most of what you see out there. All right, well, the next topic we'll be taking up, the next video will cover the subject of lighting contrast. We touched on that briefly in the first video. There's contrast backlight to key light, facial contrast, but there's also contrast of subject to background, which we haven't really done anything with in this video. All of these factors are part of the whole subject of lighting, and In the future, we will do better and better lighting using more and more lights and more tricks of the trade. I look forward to seeing you later on. Bye-bye. When you walk into a room and you sit somebody down and you give them a look, where do you put the lights? Well, yeah, where do you put them?